Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our book study. You are the happiness you seek. And, I say this practically every time. I love the book cover. Don't you love the book cover? It's when you have it out on the table and you have friends over, you can point to it and say, "Oh man, that book. What is you are the happiness you seek," they say. And this has been a great book study. I'm not looking forward to it coming to an end, although I've enjoyed every single chapter. And this chapter is no different. I was talking to Rana before we started, and this chapter has a way of pulling out something that you can relate to, right? It's awesome. The Way of Surrender. Welcome, Rana, and thank you for being our co host this week.
Hi, Bill. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your invitation, Bill. I too am loving this book.
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome. And also, this chapter is totally, as we were saying, you were talking about how it connected you to some of the things that you really related to. And I did the same thing. You could see an experience that was similar to something that Rupert speaks of in this chapter. And
Yeah.
I'm just really enjoying it. We're getting ready for many of you. I mean, everyone knows that we're coming into Labor Day weekend in the U.S. and around the world, actually. Our Lisa and I will fly to Dallas. We have an annual family reunion with my brothers and sisters. I have three brothers and a couple of sisters in Dallas. And we camp out at a state park outside of Dallas. And we're looking forward to that. And and then following that, I'm working on a documentary filming. You've heard of that also, the Awakening Mind Films series. And we're going to be filming next week. So Jenny Beal will be hosting Marlene for us next week. So she'll be here, but I'll be traveling for a couple of days filming. And so we'll get started with The Way of Surrender. Rana, where would you like to start this week?
Well, thanks, Bill. I think, as always, we just need to start at the title. I thought to myself, with all the previous chapters, we've been talking about desires and resistance. And so I just, got out that dictionary and looked up surrender. And of course, it says to cease resistance. So here's Rupert's way of giving us some instruction how to cease resisting what's happening in our experience. And then, of course, the Tolstoy quote, which I've got to be honest, I mean, I know of him, but it made me kind of dig a little deeper. And he was part of something called Christian anarchy. And so that was interesting to do a little reading, but I love the quote. Life could be limitless joy if we would only take it for what it is, in the way it is given to us. And that quote just gives me such a sense of hope that there may be a new way of seeing, these experiences that I have in my life. So
Yeah.
that first, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree. I can relate to that, and I also, I like the idea that Tolstoy. I didn't know that he was like the Renaissance man, Christian
Yeah.
anarchy. I don't think they're finished having Christian anarchy. I would be considered definitely a rebel from Christianity, as many of the well-known, like Martin Luther was a rebel, and many of the transformations that have taken place came from rebels that were, they see that they're getting stuck in the dogma or the religiosity of something, and he broke free of that. And but we all come to something where we have to surrender our attachment to any kind of book reading ideas to come to this subtle understanding that Rupert points to.
Yes, I agree. And, we've said it many times that Rupert is kind of ahead of his time, that maybe in 100 years, this kind of stuff may be taught, but the idea that everything is just happening, that there's no good or bad or label to it, that it's just happening is, I mean, that's a concept that I can't talk to my family about for sure, you know?
No, because yeah, immediately someone brings up, oh, okay, so somebody dies. That's just happening.
Right,
Mm,
right.
yes.
Yes. And it's interesting how this perspective of beingness can make that less charged,
Mm,
and can change my vision of it, through awareness. And so I so appreciate that. So this first section is the call to return. And to
yeah.
me, the word call means an invitation, and so he kind of goes through and gives us some reminders. Um, in that first paragraph, the transparency of a screen is veiled when a movie begins. Innate peace and joy is the nature of our being is obscured when we lose ourselves in this content of experience. And so that same example that you used, if someone dies, if I get so lost in the content of that experience, I think I'm actually missing some joyful moments that can happen through that process of dying. And I was able to do that with when my father passed. It was sad, but there was some joy there too. I'm able to recognize that today. Um,
Hmm.
the last sentence in that paragraph says, the ensuing suffering is the inevitable consequence of our forgetting or over the essential self. And so I love that word forgetting because I think that's what happens to me anyway. So this is, new teachings for me. So throughout the day, I forget, I become involved in the objects of experience. It might be, the dogs barking or the phone, ringing or those, realities that we deal with on this physical plane. But forgetting, it's okay because in just that nanosecond, I can remember again. And that's
Mm,
kind of what he talks about, in this next sentence. On an adventure in the paragraph. We're on an adventure, as long as I don't get stuck in the story of it. And I look at this new way of just seeing things as they are, and the welcoming he brings in this paragraph. They
hmm.
welcome it as a reminder that we have invested their happiness in objective experience. So for me, it's not like, Rana, you're wrong. You're doing it wrong. It's like, no, I just need to remember again, being gentle on myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you pick it up as a reminder, suffering is the means by which we are reminded. If you pick it up as, or if you allow it, or you shift the label to a signal. This is a signal reminding me that I'm not that I am aware of this experience, and I am the awareness that is untouched by this experience.
I love that. I also have that written in my margin, a signal to return to the surrender.
There it
So
is.
just
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is why these weekly reminders, these gatherings, and Rupert's quotes. If you're on his mailing list, he sends out a daily quote. That this is why just touching a piece of it, on a regular basis, it reacclimates, it reconditions the mind to come into the understanding of these teachings as a new default.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I don't feel now like I must do this or I ought to use this new way of seeing. I have the idea that I want it. I desire that more than staying in the suffering of the seeming reality. I want that peace and I want to experience that. And even though I know that's not the goal, it is what it is. But awareness allows me, like I said, not to have that charge, on things.
Yep.
So there's less of a reaction today,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
because
It,
my reactions always make things worse. I don't know about anybody else, but when I react bad, it's like zing, you're stepping on other people's toes.
oh, I think that's a universal experience. I don't think anyone can be exempt from that zing. when, when you join that, when you join the experience and it's going south, you go south with it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, but there's just that invitation, and there's almost a pull now, by this awareness. I don't go there for very long. There's a knowing that I'm this path is not necessary,
Right. Yeah. Well, actually, it is and it isn't. I mean, it's a signal that something's under the hood that you're unaware of, but it's coming up as a signal, and it only wants to be expressed without your resistance.
Right. And there's the welcoming.
Yeah.
So even if it is a resistance, I can welcome that and be open to it. I'm finding even in my body, there's a mind component of suffering, but when I start having that, there's a contraction in my body. And so it's that noticing there too, and just relaxing into, okay, I am resisting right now. That's the truth. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's all
Well, Jeremy at 1211 is looking for how to sign up for Rupert's quotes. Just go to rupertspira.com and sign up for his newsletter, and you'll have an option for getting a daily quote. Yep, comes every morning in your email. Rick said something here that I thought was really powerful about prayer at 1208. And if you get a chance to read what he said, just take a look at that. It's really, really good. And then at 1210, Rick says resistance may seemingly coincide with surrender. For example, prior to his capture and crucifixion, Jesus prays to save himself. Remove this cup from my lips. Then almost simultaneously he says, "Not my will, but your will be done." Yeah, that's the other piece. It's kind of like as soon as what happens is as soon as we check in with infinite being, with infinite self, that contact then gives us the next sentence, and his reaching to self-awareness, remove this cup from me, connected him to source, to presence, and presence knew, okay, this is just has to happen, and he then welcomed it. That's the way that played out. Yeah,
yeah. What
thankfully,
a
because he was the granddaddy example of all time.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think Andrew asked a question about what is suffering in the chat. Just recently I saw that pop up.
Okay, what time is that? Okay, there it is at 12:13. Can you define what suffering is? Is it a feeling or concept? Is there a difference between sufferance and a sense of lack? Suffering is in many forms, many styles. Mostly suffering is psychological. Mostly suffering is, and it can be a form of lack, fear, worry about the future, worry about something that was said. It's just suffering comes in every kind of package you can imagine. Suffering can be physical, but mostly what is spoken of in suffering in this context is psychological suffering. Yeah.
Could I add that suffering also, like at the very base, is that we've forgotten that we're part of this oneness.
That we've all forgotten.
That me as a body mind, The suffering is a result of the fact that I have created this separation and this separate self from the beingness that I truly am. And that promotes the suffering because I feel separate from the wholeness and the oneness.
Yeah, right. There's a belief that there's a separate
Yeah, right.
self. And actually, I don't think it's an accident. There's not a mistake made that made these bodysuits and that made the finite suffering experience. This is not an accident. Consciousness knew and knows what it's doing, and it's not a mistake. So I just, and this is the play of consciousness that's occurring that is really brilliant, amazing. And even in the suffering, it's still consciousness which is untouched by the suffering that's allowing suffering to be an experience. And now you can't really speak that from the rooftops or at the, in public without, for people that don't have an understanding or not on the path, because that's crazy land. That sounds really crazy that this is a good thing, but it's brilliant, really.
Right. Well, that kind of leads into the next paragraph of the story about the woman named Kunti on the
Oh,
bottom page.
right.
Her prayer was, Lord, give me some adversity so I may always remember you. I mean, that is a true welcoming prayer, help me grow by giving
Yeah.
me adversity. I'm just not sure I'm there yet, even though I understand that the pain can be the touchstone. But, and that's what kind of Rupert is getting to.
Yeah.
But she really had that understanding that having her personal desires fulfilled, that's an ego thing,
Yeah. It is.
So
I
by
mean,
asking for difficulty, she's really asking for the diminishing of her ego.
right, right. There's something in there. Of course, the ego is always the thing that is in search. It it, it has to go away. It's looking for its own demise in that request. And I would just say, when you have that request, fasten your seatbelt, because it will come as you have asked. It's like rubbing the genie's lamp. You know what I mean?
It's very open, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very open,
Yeah.
and it's quite an invitation.
Yes. Yeah. So we're on page 118, the
Mm-hmm.
top of the page. What would you look at in this section before open without resistance? What do you see in that?
Sure. Well, the paragraph that starts
Yep.
after all, the universe and the individual are not two separate systems. The individual's desire for happiness is really its desire to be relieved of everything that seems to render it separate from everyone and everything. In other words, its desire to return to the universal. And in the paragraph before, I'm sorry, I skipped that, but the last sentence, this attitude of surrender compels the universe to respond. And so it really piqued my interest, having an attitude of a surrender. Maybe
Yeah.
I can't be like Kunti, but can I just have an open attitude of surrender to bring whatever it is, that the
Yeah.
universe wants to have me experience in this bodysuit.
Right. Yes, and allowing an open space of allowing. And actually, even though I said a minute ago that that's the ego search that's looking to be undone. It looks like in that paragraph you just read, the individual's desire for happiness is really its desire to be relieved of everything that seems to render it separate from everyone and everything. Uh, in other words, its desire to return to the universal. It's almost like that desire of self for self gave itself a voice in Kunti's request.
Yes. Yes. And I think you illustrated that wonderfully with Jesus too, that wavering part. It's like, I want to be of service. And then, oh, why did I ask for this? And then, oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, right. Yeah, you connect to the light, and you connect to the universe of I am. And when I say universe, I just mean presence,
Yes.
beingness, universal I am, the thing that we all are, the you that's you.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And of course, in the next paragraph, Rupert does, talk about it's a concession. The language is a concession, the way we talk about this. I mean, we could get very bogged down in some of the language, but I think the last sentence in that paragraph is the kicker for me. The individual is a point of view of the universal within the universal and not an entity itself. It's like I'm a part of the divine I'm a perspective of it, and of course the bodysuit makes it very limited, but my beingness is just a little section, the ray of the sun, right? The wave of the ocean. It's still a part of.
yeah, yeah. But you really need. I mean, in the absolute sense, you also let go of that part
Yes.
because there's only is, and even that's too many words. Yeah,
And then the first sentence, last paragraph of this section, Bill, is exactly what you were saying. What is felt by the individual as its desire for happiness is in reality the universe's own impulse to restore its natural order. It's like the
yeah,
universe just wants that isness.
yeah,
We're creating little bits of chaos here and there, and
yeah.
it's like, come back, come back.
Well, and this is this highlights that statement, that sentence you just read highlights the question I've had for Rupert, Francis, and Rupert answered it just like this sentence when I said, "Well, who's stopping? Who's pausing? Who's shifting attention from the object of experience to awareness?" And it's this impulse right here. It's awareness gives itself, gives the seeming separate self, gives the bodysuit an impulse. So it says, what is felt by the individual is, as its desire for happiness is in reality, the universe's own impulse to restore the natural order. So that's how the bodysuit, with your name on it, it gets the impulse and then says, "Oh, I did that."
Right. When actually awareness has a movement.
Yeah, there's a movement in consciousness, and little Bill says, "Oh, yeah, I better do that.
Right.
I better shift my attention." Right? That
Yeah.
impulse comes in because that there's a totality of connectedness.
Yes.
There's not a sometimes that we're connected. It's like you can't unconnect.
But I always think I'm the movie character. Like the movie is ever present until I come to this understanding that really this this character is being driven by the author of the movie, awareness.
Yes. Yeah, and when we can have that uh, remembering, when we can have that as a new default, life becomes a much sweeter experience, even in the midst of adversity.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean you stop crying when someone dies or something travesty happens. It just means that you have a quick place of respite. You have a quicker, you have a abiding place that's the true self. That when that is touched, it's untouched by the experience, and you have a place for where love reveals itself as itself again. Yeah,
Yes.
even though love is also in the death of things, it feels better when you're resting in the place of presence, of peace, where there's only peace.
Yes.
So let's keep going.
Okay.
Let's see. I think we finished that section, and the next is open without resistance.
Yeah. In the first sentence in that section, it is also possible that an attitude of surrender may be brought about as a result of our circumstances without any effort on our part. So there's your clue again that this is being brought to us. We're not necessarily asking for it. It is just what is being revealed in awareness, you know. And the attitude of surrender is so important for me. You know, if I'm resisting and pushing that away, it's going to be more difficult for me. But what he says is the sheer intensity of the moment will eradicate the filter of thoughts and feelings through which the experience is usually mediated, allowing innate happiness to shine. And so I didn't really understand that until we got to the next page and his description of how that might happen.
Mm-hmm. Keep going.
Oh, yeah, let's keep going. In the middle of the paragraph at the top, it says, at either end of this spectrum, there lies a range of experience, which is either so pleasant or so unpleasant that the mind is not able to accommodate it within its normal frame of reference. And as a result, its activity comes to an end. I mean, I've been in spots before where the grief, you know, it was just like all thought just stopped. It was just a moment of just complete silence in that grief. And perhaps that's what he's trying to describe on that end. That would
Mm,
be my experience with that.
mm.
I'd be
Wow,
interested
that
to hear
sounds
yours.
right. Well, that sounds spot on to me. I haven't put it in perspective of a grief and that stopping point. I can say that you I have been so upset that I came to that stopping point.
Mm-hmm.
And when that stopping point happened, it was like I was watching the Bill movie without involvement, and that just sort of washed the moment away into nothing. It's brilliant, and that's the thing that's available all the time. That's where the surrender moment
Yes.
that he's describing here. That's where that's pointing to, I think.
Yes. The mind comes to its end, you know, and for me, that's that silence of pure presence.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are no thoughts coming in that moment,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know. It's almost it can be almost an awe, 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 you know, just it says in
Uh,
that paragraph that Buddhism, the term nirvana means the cessation of mind's activity,
yes.
meditation, literally meaning blown out. And
Right.
I mean, you could describe it as a mind blowing experience, right? Something so shocking that there's nothing you can even say about it. It
Right.
was, and that's my example of that blown away. And I love the last sentence. In such moments, timeless moments, it's like you're lifted right out of time. in those moments. In the absence of mind, there is no time. The mind's essential nature of peace and joy shines forth. It's unveiled, revealed, you know, and it just becomes part of that. And to be learning these ideas for me makes those experiences more delicious, because now I have a framework of what to notice. It's like, oh, my mind stopped. You, that's a miracle.
Yeah. Yeah, we could call it a miracle. And it's really our own ability for self-correction. Uh,
Yes.
Susan pasted a quote from Rupert, I think. There is a place of peace in each of us that is untouched by the content of experience. It lies just behind the mind to recognize this place. Let go of attention to the content of experience and sink into the depths of being. We cannot really find, only be this place of peace knowingly by letting go of everything not essential, thoughts, feelings, and so on, even having understood that peace and happiness can never be found in objective experience. A subtle, impulsive feeling remains, drawing us from or pulling us towards something or someone. Let this residual impulse of seeking be exposed and dissolved in this contemplation. We are already that for which we long. Trace any longing inwards towards its source. If we look for the dissatisfied I, we never find it. We find the true I of being and abide as that. Gradually, its nature of peace and joy impresses itself upon us. Yeah, awesome. Wow.
Beautiful.
Beautiful words that just sort of,
Yeah.
yeah,
I love the word abide. There's just something about that word that helps me step back. And that's what I loved about Rupert when I first started studying this. He described it as a stepping back. And I thought, I could do that, you know?
yeah, yeah. And the thing that most of us miss, if we came from other traditions, like Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within. How do you, is it in there? Where is it? But to realize that within is awareness itself. Within is just this presence that's always here. It's always me. It's always you. You are the within that he was always that he pointed to. And then when someone says it, go within. Go within just means pause and be present as I am.
So
Yeah.
simple we missed it, Bill. So simple we missed it.
Yeah. It's right here. I wonder where that is.
Right. It was hidden in the perfect place.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is
Hidden
there
in
anything
plain
else in
sight.
the word that you wanted to look at before we move on? Because
Well, the on page 119, I love this little episode. This is in another one of Rupert's books. The when his barn burns down, he's getting ready to have his first retreat with Francis Lucille, and Laura calls from the airport and says, "Oh, we're here in Barcelona." And then he goes, "Oh my God, my barn is burning down." And I don't know what he said exactly, but that's my paraphrase. And Laura says, after a brief pause, she responded, "Oh, how interesting. Be aware of the slightest impulse in you to change anything about your current circumstances. See you soon. It's like,
I have ha ha written in my margin right there.
right, right. Yes. Yes, Laura, Laura is she's this like she's this other master that lives in Francis's household. I think she was Rhonda Byrne's teacher in The Greatest Secret. I'm pretty sure Laura was her teacher. And I've tried to get Laura into our conferences for 3 years, and she just doesn't have any interest in that whatsoever. She's a true master, and I love hearing having this. Laura calls Rupert, and this is her answer for him.
It's perfect.
Yeah,
And it's that invitation. Be open to whatever it is.
yeah, yeah.
Have no
Well, I
resistance.
mean, just think of that though. You've got Francis Lucille coming into town, and your barn where he's supposed to give a retreat. Your barns are burning down. That's a big one.
It is.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
her invitation to him, he says, later that morning, sitting on the wall, I felt that I was resting on an ocean of peace. So it's so beautiful that we as seeming individuals can call to one another. Awareness calls through us to each other to bring us to this point of peace.
Yes. Yeah. So let's turn the page to 120. And while we do that, Laura, yes, Laura is the real deal. The barn is burnt down. Now I can see the moon. Well, actually, he rebuilt those barns. That's he. I've heard that since they burned down, they got rebuilt. And on page 120, what do you see on this page, Rana?
Well, I love the first paragraph, the last couple sentences. It says, as a result, because he surrenders to the moment at Laura's instruction, basically.
Yep.
He surrenders
Yep.
to that moment. He says, as a result, the innate peace of my true nature was felt in the background of experience, in spite of the chaos in the foreground. I love that because that is a great description of anything going on in my seeming reality, right? There may be chaos in the foreground, but available to me in the background, even though there's no foreground and background for whoever's going to tell me that. But there's like a pausing, a resting, a removing myself from the content of experience. And then that last sentence, later, I would learn to go there consciously. And that is what he is teaching me.
Yeah.
Rupert teaches me over and over again in a multitude of different scenarios how to access this awareness consciously. Determined,
Yeah. Yeah.
above all else.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So
How to access it as in the body mind in experience. That's what all of this is about.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where consciousness is having a better experience in these bodysuits now that it remembers itself.
Yes. And then we come upon some poetry and some prayers, which are beautiful prayers. I don't know if you want to take the time to read through them, but they are beautiful. I think the whole point of these couple of paragraphs here is the paragraph second from the bottom, where he realized that it was not the circumstance itself that had the power to give or deny happiness, but rather his response to it.
Mm-hmm.
He simply made the choice to open without resistance to his experience. And then at the bottom, it was almost impossible to remain closed in this man's presence. So contagious was his happiness and his enthusiasm, despite, this man had lost 3 infant sons, and he was still full of joy. And, people like that are full of joy are very attractive. It's like a magnet. right? I want what you have. Tell me what you're doing so I can have a little piece of what you have.
Mm-hmm.
We're
Yeah.
attracted to that. I think it's a calling. Again,
Yeah.
it's an invitation. And
Yeah.
his lesson is, no matter what has happened in my experience, I can still experience peace and joy. And
Mm.
it begins with a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big one. The
Yeah,
loss of his three infant sons. Oh my God.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the big one. And for
Yeah,
him to find that place, to be able to, that's a total miracle.
yes. And that has been my personal direct experience. I came to a point where I was absolutely devastated with the circumstances in my home with my beautiful disabled daughter. I came right to the end of myself, you know, and then these teachings came into my existence. There they were, like the awareness answering the call. You
Yep.
don't have to suffer over these circumstances anymore. You can feel a peace and a joy,
Yeah.
if you have the attitude.
Well, it's a signal that surrender makes, sends a buzz out to the universe. This is my paraphrasing, and it comes back and knocks you on the head with a book or somebody telling you about Rupert or this or something other, some way the universe is going to answer the call of that buzz, that vibration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, on the next page, the second paragraph, the only other possibility is to embrace our current circumstances, to drop any resistance toward them, and to fully align ourselves with them. And it's fully within everyone's capacity to do this. That's the exciting thing to me. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
anybody can do this. If you've got a willingness and an open heart, because like you said before, this is not something I can walk into the living room or standing on the street corner and relay some of these ideas. They're going to think I really lost my mind, which is what I'm trying to do. So, but it's just that beautiful. And then Krishnamurti's teaching, my secret teaching is this: I don't mind what happens. And all I hear is I paid none of it any attention.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah. Whatever happens, that was Byron Katie's statement too. Whatever happens, I don't mind. And that's it. You come to a place in your experience when things that maybe would have caused response, you go, oh wow, I don't mind that. I don't. That seems to be something that becomes common.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He iterates the problem in the next paragraph, what we need to watch out for. It says, if we invest others with the power to determine our happiness, like for me, my happiness was completely dependent upon what kind of day my daughter was having. It was like I would go take her temperature and then figure out how I was going to go through my day, completely reliant on another person's beingness for my happiness. And
Mm.
when I'm in the middle of doing that, I didn't know I was doing that,
Yeah.
but I was totally invested in that.
Hmm.
And we negotiate, it says, we negotiate our experiences, hoping that they'll conform in what we need to be happy, right? So there's the fixer in me. I'll try this. I'll try that. Oh, I'll dance on this coffee table, figuratively, whatever it sings. But such a life will be one of constant struggle, punctuated by brief moments of relief when circumstances conform to our vision of how they should unfold. And I think
Hmm.
that's such a big buzzword, the word should. If I hear that I am off base because I'm judging what's happening.
Mm.
you
You
know,
use the word should.
should. If
Yeah,
should comes up, there's a
that's a signal.
self-righteousness there.
Yeah,
There's a, I think I know how this is supposed to be going down.
right. Yeah,
And I have a preference, don't you know? And if I don't get it, not only am I going to be unhappy, but everybody else around me too. That's
uh,
just my honesty for you.
yeah. He
It's
says,
a much better
however,
way to do this.
as the situation changes, as it inevitably will, these brief moments of respite in which our innate peace and joy is briefly felt will be eclipsed again and the struggle will resume. It is for this reason that Henry David Thoreau observed that the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation.
Yes. You know,
Yeah. And
inside, just
women.
a smile on my face. I'm fine. Yeah, everything's good. Yeah,
Fine.
I got this.
How you
When
doing?
really,
Oh, I'm good.
yeah, all right. Yeah, everything's
That's
really good.
funny.
It was more of living as endurance, having to endure the circumstances as they came up and directed everything, the circumstances. That's why this teaching has just been so mind blowing for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. For everyone.
Yeah.
So the last sentence in that group of paragraphs, if we surrender our happiness to the vicissitudes of life, it is only a matter of time before the tide will turn.
Yes. If I keep directing my happiness in an object or the content of experience, sometimes I'll get what I want. And then that's where my personal body mind goes, see, you were right. And then it's going to swing back the other way because I'm dependent on that circumstance to make me happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the dissolution of the mind, you want to look at
Right.
that?
Yes. So we've had the call, we've had the invitation, and now, and then in the last section, Rupert asks us to be open to any resistance. And now he describes how the mind will dissolve in this. And
Nice.
he goes into culture, you know, and I love this story. He talks about initiation, you know, some of the older cultures using certain rituals and rites for the transformation of a child into adulthood. And then at the top of 122, he asks, what was adult life in these cultures? It says, the felt understanding of their relationship with the whole, a life in which a person understood and felt that they shared their being with all people. That's what these rituals did for these people. It was a reminder we're a part of everyone and all things and all the animals. And it was a beautiful understanding. And we don't do that kind of stuff anymore. We give them a cell phone and a driver's license and we're like, go, you know. So it's not so much helpful. But the next paragraph where he's talking about the different ways in other cultures to test this idea of becoming one with all. I love the cone. I think I think it might have been Jiffy that week. She talked about these questions where they're supposed to make you confused. They're supposed to give you a lot to think about, kind of
Mm-hmm.
almost like a puzzle, right?
Yeah.
And so here's the question: what is, but does not exist? And I love that. When I read that, I sat in contemplation for a moment about that, because that is what you guys have pointed me to do, is don't think that I know what that is or the answer to what that is. Take a moment and have that direct experience. And I was reminded that the word exist, Rupert defines it as standing out from the background. So what, if you go back to the question, what is but does not exist? What is but does not stand out from the background? And that is the awareness.
Yeah, it's the
Because
background.
it is the background. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so it was a fun exercise for me personally to just take 5 words and contemplate on that with these understandings.
Yeah.
The mind's inability to raise a single thought in response leaves it open and silent. So after I did the definition practice, I sat in that silence because there aren't words to describe the beingness in that place because it's so beautiful, you know? It's back to like when your mind is blown, the end of your mind in either direction. And I don't have to suffer those extremes anymore to access that place.
Right.
It's
Yes.
always available.
Yeah.
I don't have to suffer to get there. I just have to surrender as quickly as I notice.
It happens of its own.
Yes.
It's in a new default. It's like it happens and it's already over.
Yes. So hopefully these teachings will become more commonplace because that last paragraph of, or 1, 2, 3 down, the purpose is to dissolve or expand the boundary of the finite mind and reveal its infinite, impersonal essence. And I don't know of any real rituals that we do in at least America that promote that kind of teaching to our young people as they're getting ready to embark.
Well, it hasn't been common. We weren't raised that way, but I have a sense that as this understanding grows, it will filter itself into the culture.
I think so too. I
Yeah.
think so. And it's not because we're doing it, it's because awareness is having that movement,
Yes.
you know. Um in the next section down, I highlighted the paragraph about the tantric tradition.
Yeah, we're on page 122.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
however, the tantric tradition recognized desire not only as a means by which the ego or sense of separation may perpetuate and enhance itself, but also as a means by which our longing may be returned to its source. In this case, the practitioner may surf a wave of desire all the way back to the shore of awareness, where she will gently be deposited. I just love the picture of that.
Yes. Yeah. Surfing the wave of desire, surfing
Yes,
awareness. Yeah.
yes, it's beautiful.
Loved it. Yeah.
So at the bottom of the page, I just have a few things highlighted. Intensely pleasurable experiences, as well as unpleasant ones, bring the mind's habitual activity to an end. So he's made this idea that maybe that's where the end is, and he's repeating it here and leaving aside the fine line between indulgence and transcendence. This tradition recognized that any experience can be a portal to one's true nature. So like
Yeah.
we were saying before, it doesn't have to be death or winning the lottery. That we don't need to have those extremes to push us to our mind's end, right? We can experience this, because I love the word portal. My favorite portal is just putting my hand on my heart and saying I am for a few minutes. I mean, that
Yeah.
does it for me.
There's a few comments on the board I want to pick up. Barbara at 1250 said, living presence of awareness is existence. Yeah. And love you too, Terry Wade. I love this conversation. Perfect timing. Awesome. Millie says, surrender is the inner transition from resistance to acceptance, from no to yes. Yes. And William Price, what being comfortable with cognitive dissonance is what Francis is explaining about not knowing. Good. These are all great comments. God is doing it. Yes, Millie. God is doing it. God's the only thing there is. So, yes, God's doing it. Shelley said, I take comfort now in my response, all is well, as my answer to people's inquiries as to how we are doing instead of going into a story of what we are experiencing, because in truth, all is well. Before this path, I felt guilt for lying if I did not feel like talking about what we were experiencing. Yeah, when you come into that space, all is well. And if something's coming up, something's bubbling, you can just see it privately and just allow it to be as it is without making it, expand it by talking about it. Very wise. Rick says, for these teachings to become commonplace is not necessarily a good thing. It must be driven by the right folks. If presence isn't at its roots, it will be seen as just another religion. Yeah, you're right. It becomes, because you see a lot of common spiritual terms being thrown around by marketing experts, and awakening has become a very big a buzzword, and it will tend to lose its truth or be diluted by just being dropped in the word bucket of things that get people's attention. Oh, awakening. Oh, I've heard about that. I want to have some of that. Yeah. And Marta said, Rana, thank you for sharing about the trials of caring for your beautiful daughter. I can only imagine you are embodiment. You are the embodiment of all that Rupert is teaching us, all that awakening awareness is teaching us. Thank you. Yeah, awesome. Oh, there was something Yada said that I thought was great. After being aware, we become the musicians in the Titanic. Might as well play. Good, right? Yeah, that's awesome.
Yada, you're the
Yeah,
best.
you're the best, Yada. Thank you. Okay, so we're at the bottom of 122 still, and I wanted to say what I put in the margin is how very gentle the language of this paragraph is. That when he said that the second paragraph from the bottom of the page, where it starts with intensely pleasurable experiences can thus be considered to contain within them the same capacity as unpleasant ones to bring the mind's habitual activity to an end, and may therefore also be cultivated as spiritual practices. And I know you already read that, but I was drawn to how gentle that this statement is. It's just a gentle inclusion of experience. And also he says that, leaving aside the fine line between indulgence and transcendence, this tradition recognized that any experience can be a portal to one's true nature, warning only that one should not be seduced by pleasant experiences into stopping short of full and lasting happiness.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. There's more.
there's more. Keep going.
Keep going.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
As
And
Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj said, increase and widen your desires. Yes, there's a lot more, until nothing but reality can fulfill them. That is, do not be satisfied with fleeting moments or periods of happiness. Seek nothing less than lasting happiness, and understand that lasting happiness can only be found in that which lasts.
yes, I love that. In the margin, right after in that which lasts, I have beingness, awareness, our true nature, eternal, changeless, ever present.
Yes. Yes. That which lasts is the thing that always is.
Yes. Yes.
And it's
I've been doing some check-in moments throughout my day, just pausing for a second and just asking myself, how's it going? you know? And the truth is that so much of the chaos of my life, which I now understand was created between my two ears, is gone. And most of the time the answer is, I feel great. You know, I mean, what a way to walk through this world.
yeah, it's experiencing the truth of what's being pointed to. It's experiencing an embodiment of these ideas.
Yeah. I mean, if you had told me it's as simple as the pausing and remembering the truth of what I am, beingness, oneness, eternal, if you had told me that it would be that simple to recognize that for a moment, and then you'll be amazed at what happens. It was just that simple openness in action for me that started all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, just so beautiful.
So let's pick up that surrendering the illusory self after we read a couple of comments. We have one from Rick West, the Father at 1257. The Father, the totality of consciousness is always in the driver's seat, full stop. What matters most is earnestness, Nisargadatta, truth's longing for itself. That's perfectly stated. Thank you, Rick. And then Millie said, where are you now? Are you willing to allow yourself to see everything around you and within you as the doorway to the kingdom of heaven, waiting only for you to acknowledge its presence and to open it? Are you willing to truly be right where you are, wholly right where you are, the way of the heart? J.M. That's from, what's that book? There's that's the way of the heart. Yeah, that's, J.M. is the way of mastery. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. So let's look at this last section, surrendering the illusory self.
Yeah, I love the question. Sometimes I feel as if everything in my life is encouraging me to make this investigation into the nature of myself. But at the same time, I'm afraid of it, which is so natural. It's a threat, not only to my identity, but to my way of life. Well, it is a threat to our identity for sure, because it asks me to put aside everything I've learned about being a body, you
Mm-hmm.
know? I mean, I've been convinced for 50 years that this is real, you know? So these
Mm-hmm.
ideas are a little bit shaking, ground shaking for me. And he says that, and you mentioned this before, Bill. Awareness was introduced to me, through reading a book, watching a video, talking, having conversation with some of my new friends. And it was just so attractive to me. I was called, and I'm just so grateful that I had the openness to investigate what you guys term, or we term, as the illusory self, because it is a little scary. You feel like, what's going to be left if I have no body? Well, my body is turned into not only a great communication device, but a great way to get around on this physical planet and enjoy the adventure. So I have an appreciation for this movie that I'm in and I'm
Yes.
moving through. So in the second paragraph under the question, it says, in extreme cases, it may feel like dying. It is a kind of death. It's a death to the self, right? Small s self, the thing that I've been identifying with my whole life. I am Rana. What do you mean I'm not Rana? you know? And it is the dissolution of the illusory self, an image, an idea, a feeling. And I guess that is what my personal body self image is. It's just an image. It's an idea that I have. I guess I'm a concept that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes,
it's
you're
full
just
of
a total concept, man.
a total concept, man. And it has sensations and feelings. And it just is.
Yeah, and
You know,
it's cool uh, uh, when you can see the concept activity, the bodysuit movie, Rana or Bill, or put your name on it. It's cool when you can see it without judgment and without labels, and you can just see it for what it is. And it's easier to call it a concept, and you are that which is aware of the concept, the bodysuit. And when you can zoom out and stay there, you can laugh at the stupid things that are thought of or done or experienced.
yes, Millie says, enjoy the movie. Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. That paragraph continues. It says it is the disentanglement of ourself from the elements of experience. I mean, basically, this is just a bag of thoughts, memories, histories, activities, and relationships, you know? And it's just a movie, and I don't have to get too caught up in it. And so then he goes on to talk about our inner life, that this unsolicited plunge into our true nature may be disorienting. We may shrink from it and prefer our old identity in spite of the suffering. It's like, this is all too much for me to take. I'll just live in the bodysuit. Forget it.
Yeah, but you know what? You can't.
Right.
Once you taste of the truth,
Yes.
you can't go back. The road that brought you there, it's gone.
That's right. That's right. Because once I had the glimpse, I was thirsty.
Right.
It just makes you want more of it. So I completely agree. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, thank God. Millie said, "Thank God that's true." I mean, thank God that road isn't available anymore. You can't go. You even if you think you can go back, you can't go back,
no, it
and you
says
don't want to.
the experience is like a crack in our familiar sense of ourself. We may plaster it over through fear of the unknown with strategies that once worked well, but we will never be the same again, nor will those strategies be as effective as they once were, or at least seem to be. So, I mean, once we go down this path, you got to keep going, because the old way doesn't even work anymore.
Yeah, well, you're not the same. You woke. You waked up a little bit, so you can't go back to what you thought you were because now you know a little bit about who you really are.
Yes.
Yeah, it's self awakening. It's self awareness is coming online
Right.
as the true self.
So that's where he's talking about our inner life sort of dismantling and falling apart. And then these next couple paragraphs are about the possibility of one's outer life falling apart too once we start on this journey. I mean, I've heard a number of experiences where people just they go on this path and they lose everything, and they don't.
Well, it wasn't a losing. It was I did what Moses did. I left everything. I left my business, my family. I left everything and went into the wilderness. It was a
Yes.
radical leaving. I think that's what the Buddha did. Siddhartha also did that. Yeah.
And the old has broken down, but the new has not yet emerged in some people. And in the absence of the correct interpretation, we may feel hopeless. And what I wrote there is it's a crushing blow, a surrender. It reminds me of when people hit their bottom as alcoholics. That's a crushing blow. and everything is falling apart in one's life when they're at that point. But however, from that point, it's just a beautiful jumping off place into something new and whole and different and peaceful, and it all comes about in recovery from the help of a higher power or whatever concept one chooses in that. And mine is awareness, that's the power.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's just beautiful. So your outer life might fall apart too, but don't despair because, it's just revealing itself.
Yep. Yep. I like this dream. We only have about 5 minutes left. Let's look at
Mhm.
this dream that Rupert had. I thought this dream was amazing.
Yes,
He
it's
said
beautiful.
he said once while attending a retreat with Francis and staying with him and Laura at their home in Southern California, I had a dream. It was the night before the final day of the retreat, and in the dream, it was also the last day of a retreat with Francis, but in a different house. It was a large house with many rooms, and I was looking everywhere for Francis to say goodbye to him. Eventually, I came upon a small room, because dark because it had no windows. In the center of the room, as I entered from a door in one corner of the room, Francis entered through a door in the opposite corner. We met in the middle and embraced. I rubbed his back and with one of my hands, a gesture he would often make when saying goodbye to me, and said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." I was standing on tiptoes and feeling a little unstable, reached out behind me for a rail to steady myself. At the moment, a voice inside said clearly, "Don't hold on to anything you know." I let go of the rail, and our two bodies dissolved into one another. When our bodies reemerged, he said to me, "When speaking to people, remember to tell them who it is that bears the light." Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, wow.
it's a beautiful vision of oneness.
Yeah. Prophetic.
Yeah.
A prophetic vision. This is likened to some of the visions that Mary had, that Joseph had. This would be something that, it could be put directly into some mystical experience.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, that's it. The whole dream says, carry this light to others, take this message to others. And
Yeah.
that is exactly what he is doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we just quickly go over the last two paragraphs? I don't want to
Go
lose
ahead.
out
Yep.
in that, it says you can give yourself entirely to this understanding, and it's not necessary to worry about the effect it'll have on your life. All you will lose is your unhappiness on the inside and your conflicts on the outside. That's all. I'm willing to lose that. The universe begins to cooperate with you rather than seeming to frustrate you. And so there's the perspective is there's no me. I am the universe. I am the awareness. And this is just rising in form, And so I don't have to get
Yep.
frustrated. I don't have to be upset. And then
Hmm.
you will find yourself leading a creative, productive life without feeling that you did anything in particular to bring it about. Like you said earlier, Bill, once things start happening, they're flowing. Kind of like how I get the opportunity to sit on this book study with you. You didn't do anything to bring it about. In fact, you didn't. You simply ceased separating yourself from the rest of the universe and thus allowed the universe to fulfill its purpose through you. I will step back and let him lead the way.
And there it is. Yep. Wow, there's a lot of course concepts in this understanding also. When you start to put some of those pieces in place. Like I
Yes.
will not value the valueless,
Mhm.
and I will step back and let it lead the way. All of these things are so
Mhm.
amazing.
Mhm.
Well, we've come to the end of our time. Everyone, thank you for being here. And Rana, it has been a joy to have you as a co host. Thank you. And for all of you that don't know, Rana is my co host in the Awakening Mastery class that we're doing for a year. Actually, we're going to extend it into next year because a lot of people like to do the workbook lessons for the entire year, and I've done them in the non-dual translation, and they're quite good. They're very inspiring and inspired. And Rana is a co-host for that when we meet bi-monthly or bi-weekly. And if you're Lindsay, if you're there, or Susan, if you could put a link in for the conference, we have our free conference coming up in 2 weeks, from or 2 weeks and a few days. The End of Seeking conference. If you're not registered, please click the link and register for free. And I won't be here next week. Jenny Beal will be here with Marlene Reisman because I'll be filming the documentary with the film crew. And Rana, thanks again. Thank you all. Love you. I'll see you in 2 weeks, but you'll have an invitation to come back next week, and Jenny will be your host.
Yeah.
Bye,
Thank you, Bill.
everyone.